super fun, and all about artisan cheese and more to melt your peaceful heart and toast your peaceful life. Coming to you from the Appalachian Mountains of southwestern Virginia, this is the Peaceful Heart Farmcast.
Hey, this is Scott Hall from Peaceful Heart Farm, and you are listening to the Peaceful Heart Farmcast.
Hello, everybody. Melanie Hall here. I hope you are doing very, very well. The conversation today and every day revolves around the value of tradition, traditional homestead living, traditional raw milk products, and artisan cheese. Topics discussed here are designed to create new perspectives and possibilities for how you might add the taste of tradition to your life. Blackberry jam, that's today's topic. Seedless blackberry jam, of course. I can't abide those tiny seeds between my teeth. I'm also starting to preserve veggies from the garden. So much to talk about today. First, a shout out to you all. Thank you and welcome new listeners. I hope you'll stick around, subscribe, and share my podcast. Welcome back, veteran homestead loving regulars. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your day to listen to me. There are tons of things going on at the farm this week. Let's get to it. Scott is still having to do so many other things. The creamery work is creeping along. After tomorrow, that will change somewhat. Part of the reason he has less time on the creamery is the twice daily caring for the steer and the bull that are going to processing tomorrow. So training the steer and the bull to be comfortable with the trailer has been quite the job for Scott. I talked about the small corral he built to enclose them in close proximity with the trailer. They had to go into the trailer to get their hay. Twice a day, Scott has been feeding them hay and filling their water. The space is quite small, so they ate their ration and were ready for more when he showed up. Now, he's been doing this for 2 weeks now, and it was quite time-consuming, but it worked. They got very comfortable with the setup and would willingly go into the trailer to eat their hay. Within a relatively short period of time, they were just going in there. Cattle are really such creatures of habit. They don't like things that are different or new, but once they get used to things being a certain way, they just go on about their business. And so that's what it came down to. As far as the girls go, I think we have finally completed the AI breeding. At least I hope so. Fly control is working. Even the ag tech asked what we were doing and commented on how well he thought it was working. It does have to be done twice a day, but that is easy for us because we're milking twice a day. Scott does it while the milking machine is running. So this is a natural spray that we make. It's made with apple cider vinegar, and there's oil to make it stick, and then there's soap to emulsify the whole batch together. And then there are essential oils like citronella and tea tree oil and lavender, some other things that bugs and flies and such just don't like. And so that's really all that fly spray is. So anyway, Scott sprays them while the milking machine is running. So he's just standing there waiting on them to be milked out. And so he sprays them down with this, and he can do it twice a day. It's easy. It works with our schedule. For beef cattle, it really wouldn't work that well. But for milk cows, while they're in milk, which is while the flies are there, it works really well for us. Well, except for Cloud. Cloud is so touchy about anything from like her underbelly down. If she's got that milking machine on, she's really touchy. He can spray her back and her sides easy enough, but as soon as he tries to spray lower, she starts kicking if that milking machine is hooked up to her. So he was just doing it either before or after. So recently he tried it again while the milker was running. And so, but again, something about being hooked up to that machine with the spray was upsetting to her. But he thought that surely by now she must have gotten used to the spraying and would tolerate it while the milking machine was running. Nope. She kicked and kicked and kicked. Of course, she kicked the inflations off, and Scott was able to get in there and pull that equipment out from under her feet before she destroyed it. But it was a close call. I mean, she really kicked. So we're back to square one with her. Use the fly spray either before or after, but not during the time that the machine is actually running. Now let's talk about the intelligence of goats. Do they have any? Well, they actually do. They're quite adept at escaping captivity, except for one specific circumstance. They can get their heads caught in the fence over and over again. And some have a hard time figuring out that it is unwise to put your head through there because your horns are going to get in the way of pulling your head back out. And this morning, not one, not two, but 3 had to be rescued from their self-imposed imprisonment. Now, as far as the sheep and the donkeys, there's not too much to say there. The lambs are healthy and growing. The moms are also doing well. The donkeys are doing their job well, keeping the predators away. We couldn't ask for more in that regard. So it's nice to have that. We started with sheep. We really like the sheep. But again, we just don't have the pasture to raise enough of them to really make a living. But we love lamb. Now, the quail, there are 53 quail chicks in the brooder. They're a week and a half old, and they're nearly fully feathered. It is amazing. It is amazing. They're doing great. This week, I figured out how to save money and time cleaning up their mess that they make with the food. When they're eating, they fling the food all around. They literally put their head in the opening, and then they start shaking it back and forth and just spreading that grain all over the place. And what I discovered by accident was that once the feeders got down to a certain level, the shape of the container prevented them from slinging it outside of the feeder. So the feeders they're a half-gallon jar that's screwed onto a base, and the base is where there are holes in the side of that base, and they put their head in there, and they can get the grain. So ideally, you fill up the jar, you screw on the lid, you turn it over so the jar's upside down, and then the feed empties into that feeder tray. And as they eat the food, then more comes from the jar down, gravity fed down into the feeder tray. And what I found out was that once the jar is empty, and then you've just got the feeder tray and it starts to get emptied, the level would be low enough that they could no longer strew that food all over the place. I mean, they still sling their heads back and forth, but they're actually putting their heads kind of deeper down in there, and the food stays inside the feeder tray. So they're slinging back and forth, but they're down inside there, so it's not actually coming out. So it means I keep a closer check on their food, but they're small. They really weren't eating that much. They were just wasting it. I mean, it's the amount that's being wasted right now is nearly zero. Before that change, I would fill up that half-gallon jar, and in a couple of days, it would be nearly empty, and so I would refill it. And that's a lot of feed, like every couple of days, filling those up. The problem was that most of it was on the floor of the brooder being trampled and pooped on. It was quite a mess. And now with my new system, they still make a mess because they're birds and they poop a lot, and there are a lot of them. However, there is no longer a whole bunch of wasted feed mixed in with the poop, because it takes, 8 cups to fill up a half a gallon, and I'm giving them about, I'm going to say maybe a cup and a half a day. So maybe they're eating maybe 25% of what they were wasting. They were only eating like 25%, and the rest of it was all waste. So the jars are still there, but the jars are empty. Instead of filling them up, I do screw the jar into the top of the feeder because it keeps it firmly in place, and it keeps them from literally getting inside there and just pooping all over it. But anyway, I put a little feed in the tray, and it works. Yay. They were literally wasting like 4 times of what they were actually eating. And now the brooder doesn't require as much changing of bedding, and we don't have to buy as much feed. It's a great solution. Now, the previous batch of chicks can be considered grown at this point. They are a little over 7 weeks old, and I say they're grown because I'm getting 15 to 18 eggs daily from the penthouse. There are 50 birds up there, and it's likely that 25 or so are hens. So we could easily see those 15 to 18 eggs daily reach 25 over the next week. Usually 8 weeks is when they're considered to be fully grown, but I've been getting eggs now for well over a week. Started out, just 1, 2, 3, and within a week, I was up to getting these 15 to 18 eggs now. So that's great. The garden is still going great guns. I have to water a lot. Sometimes we get afternoon thunderstorms, but most days I have to get out there and give them some water. A few of the tomatoes are starting to turn yellow, and there are so many out there. It won't be long now, and they will start ripening by the gallons. I'll take a 5-gallon bucket out there and start bringing them in. That's going to be so great. The sunflowers are blooming just in the last week or so. Some of them have shot up to about 12 feet. That's about as tall as they're going to get. 10 to 12 feet is how they go. But it's interesting, for most of the time, they were all relatively close in height. There was a couple of inches here or there, but they were all like growing together. But now there are lots of varying heights. Just in the last week or so, some of them shot all the way up to their full height of 12 feet. Some of them maybe only 10. Some of them are even shorter than that. But almost all are blooming. And that flower there's just the one big flower, right? And it's growing so fast. Just like 2 or 3 days ago. Yeah, it was only 2 or 3 days ago that I noticed the first one. And it was, I don't know, 2 or 3 inches across, maybe from what I could tell, way down below it. But it was yesterday that I was looking at them, and they were some of them were like 6 inches across. So growing fast. Those flowers are growing very fast. I'll keep you posted on how that goes. I hope to have lots and lots of seeds from these flowers. Plus, it's so cool to see them grow. The peppers are coming on strong as well. They probably need to be fertilized to make bigger peppers, but I'm okay with them being a little smaller. There are just so many of them. I'm trying to figure out where to set up the dehydrator because I'm going to dehydrate a lot of them. The one that I have, it's pretty big. Last year, I had it on my countertop in the kitchen. This year, my countertops are full of milk cans and butter churn stuff. The milk cans are usually somewhere else. But anyway, I may end up just putting it on the dining room table. We'll see. Some of those peppers I'm going to use in making pickled peppers. Those great peppers that they have at Subway that I think they're called pepperoncini, but they're similar to the banana peppers that I have. I actually like banana peppers better than pepperoncini. Both peppers they're mild, they're sweet pepper, but the banana peppers are tangy where the pepperoncini are slightly bitter. So I like the bananas. I'll be slicing and canning some of those. I also plan on canning some of the jalapenos. I might even try my hand at a mixed hot pepper batch because I've got those hot sweet, not sweet. They're hot cherry peppers. There is a sweet cherry pepper as well, but these are hot cherry peppers. And then I've got the jalapenos, and I've got some serrano peppers that are coming along a little bit more slowly, but there are a ton of them out there. So those might make a great mixed pepper, a mixed hot pepper. I'm going to have so much fun with peppers. Okay, now the main topic of today is the Blackberry Patch and Blackberry Jam. In order to have Blackberry Jam, I need to have some blackberries, and therein lies the problem. I'm always saying how much there is to do and so little time to do it. And the blackberry canes have been neglected over the past couple of years. And they just need to be cleared out every single year, but we've really not done that. And I already had too much blackberry jam and syrup, and so I just didn't worry about it. The birds and the other animals were getting all of the berries, and I was okay with that. But unfortunately, the canes and the vines need to be trimmed and cut back because blackberries are very prolific. And the berries grow on the new growth, and so the old canes actually need to be removed regularly as well. So not only is it spreading everywhere, but you've got a bunch of old, dried stuff that's not doing anything except taking up space. Then there's the fact that they they grow all, and they spread all over the place. We have the original plants all in nice rows and a trellis erected to keep them trained to the row. Well, that actually doesn't work out so well if you don't go out there and actually train them to the trellis. There are vines out there that shot up from the ground, arched into the air, and well over my head. And they are thumb thick. They're just really big. They do grow so well. And you know they're not going to arch over the trellis just because it's there. Well, they'll do that sometimes, but they just go wherever they want. They're just as likely to arch across to the next row. And not just one side. No. This cane arches this way, that cane arches that way. And not only do the vines go across from one row to the next and then get tangled there and block your walkway, but they'll touch down in the middle of the rows. And rooting blackberry canes is really easy. You just stick them in the dirt. So everywhere that they arched over and touched the ground, a new cane was born. So it's become quite a jungle out there. And I was going to go down there with a pair of hedge trimmers and a couple of different pruning tools and just slowly work my way through the mess so that I could actually get to the berries and pick them. However, Scott offered to use the chainsaw instead, and I immediately took him up on that offer. We had already decided that I wasn't going to try and make it pretty. I was just going to cut through there. So we just needed to cut through that jungle so I could get to the berries. There are so many berries out there, but it was impossible to get to them. There are no actual rows left. So that was the first task, to reestablish the rows. So Scott took the chainsaw out there and he cut a path between the rows. Well, he did most of the rows. There are still a few rows to go. But it was enough for me to get in there with a couple of buckets, and I think I got enough for a batch of jelly. Or jam, actually, is what I'm going to make. And now that path is clear, I'll be able to get more. There are still lots of red ones out there that will be ripening over the next couple of weeks. I think by mid-August, they will have played out. But for the next couple of weeks, I should be able to go out there every few days and get more berries. Now, we'll still need to get in there and clean it up. As I said, the old canes need to be removed, and the ones that grew to the middle of the paths need to be cut all the way to the ground. And hopefully we'll keep those trimmed back from now on. I have a better idea of what I need to do there. I had been letting Scott handle all of that, but I think I might get in there and handle some of that because he's just so busy with other things. And now another issue that we had was the encroachment of wild blackberries. Wild blackberries have wicked thorns. Well, some domestic ones do too, but we planted thornless blackberries. And now there are a bunch of wild blackberries mixed in with our thornless varieties. And they're easy to spot. They will rip your clothes off. As I said, wicked thorns. Some of them are pretty big too. I have to wear socks out there, which I don't like to do. I just throw on my garden shoes. But with the wild blackberries out there, my ankles just would get ripped up. You know, long sleeve shirt, gloves. Anyway. So blackberries grow really well in our area, and we use the goats to keep them under control in the pastures. But we can't use the goats in the orchard. Goats won't care whether they have thorns or not. They'll simply eat them all. They did a great job out on the island in the middle of the big pond. That was just nothing but one big mess of wild blackberries and wild roses, and they're gone now. It's just grass out there now. So long story short, I was able to harvest some blackberries. Folks at the farmer's market have been asking for jam, and I'm going to make some tomorrow. It's quite the task. As I mentioned earlier, I can't stand seeds in my blackberry jam. And fortunately, I've come up with a system for getting those seeds out that is not onerous. I used to watch my mom using a food mill. Back in the day, it was all done by hand, where you put the berries in there and you're just turning and turning and turning. You're trying to press it through this sieve. Today, we have tools that make that task much easier. I have a food mill attachment for my KitchenAid mixer. And it's quite simple to use. You hook it up, turn it on, put the blackberries in the hopper, and the fruit and the pulp are separated from the seeds. I use it for tomatoes also. There's quite a bit of cleanup afterwards, but for me, it's still worth the effort. And the end product is out of this world. I love blackberry jam. I have a stainless steel pot made specifically for making jams and jellies. And the bottom is weighted. It has pint increments embossed on the side. And then there's even a pour spout on one edge. I usually dip, but it's nice to have the pour spout there when I want it. And the biggest advantage of this particular pot is the shape. It is perhaps 8 or 9 inches in diameter at the bottom and maybe 12 or so inches at the top. And what that does is provide a greater surface area for evaporation. So it's just wider at the top. And this is important to me as I like to make my jams without added pectin. So instead of gelling after 2 to 5 minutes at a boil when using pectin from a box, I think it may even take less than 2 minutes. It takes about 30 minutes or so to reach the proper temperature for gelling without the pectin. And again, the extra time is worth it to me. The ingredients are simple. You got blackberries and sugar. I used the recipe in the Ball canning book. It takes 9 cups of berries to 6 cups of sugar, 30 minutes of cook time, and it's ready to go in a jar. Jams and jellies are generally sealed by using water bath canning method. Basically, you're covering the jars with boiling water for 10 to 15 minutes, perhaps 20 for our elevation. Whatever the recipe indicates is what I do. So boiling water bath, usually 10, 15, 20 minutes, and you're done with that. So canning used to be a task that I put off as long as I could. It seemed quite complicated. And now, having done it many times over many years, it seems quite simple. It's amazing how that happens. In the beginning, reading the recipe over and over to make sure I have everything just right. And now, more often than not, I only pull out the book to refresh my memory on how long it needs to boil. What do you think? Would you like to learn how to can jams and jellies? Once the creamery is completed, the commercial kitchen will come next. How about a few classes in cooking and preserving food? Final thoughts. So that's it for today's podcast. Life is full here, and the craziness of the world, oh my gosh, is it crazy? It seems far away. We are blessed with this life that we've built over the last 17 years. It feeds us physically, emotionally, and spiritually. There's always purposeful activity and a sense of connection with our Lord in every moment. And I know you have that too. But for me, this environment makes it so much easier. God's creation is always there at our fingertips. I hope you enjoyed the trip around the homestead and through the blackberry brambles. And if you did, please hop over to the Apple Podcasts, subscribe, give me a 5-star rating and review. Also, please share it with any friends and family who might be interested in this type of content. Thank you so much for stopping by the homestead. And until next time, may God fill your life with grace and peace.